Good morning. It sounds like domestic violence and violence is a theme here. And I just wanted to ask a question before I begin. How many of us have heard or asked, why doesn't she leave? Or heard other people ask that, why doesn't she leave? Show your hands. Well, one of the biggest problems is that because she falls into poverty. I grew up in an abusive home, and so I left home very young as well. And growing up, I didn't have a lot of skills. I didn't have a lot of support. I thought I was extremely shy, but it turns out I had anxiety. And so when I met my children's father, I thought he was the love of my life. What I didn't recognize was stalking behavior. We went everywhere together. If I went to my family's or my friends, he would always call, and I was thinking, oh, he loves me, but no, he's stalking me, right? Things escalated, and I don't know if people realize this, but also once, a woman gets pregnant, it's almost like as if the control gets worse, and things escalated and escalated. And when my children were young, it escalated so bad that I did have to go to a shelter. There was times I'd go to friends and families, but I did go to a shelter. And at the shelter, I heard very traumatic stories, to the point where I thought I was taking somebody else's space in the shelter. I didn't want to take away from another woman. And there's times when you go through an experience and you actually minimalize it because you don't, you kind of put it behind you, and you want the relationship to work. You invested so much time, and you don't even really realize that, it's addicted love and not really love, real love. It's control. And so being pushed to leave out of the shelter, because you can only stay a certain amount of time, and communicable diseases like my children would get hand, foot, and mouth disease and roseola and things that I've never even heard about before. And I just wanted to go home and go home to my stuff. So I did go home, and he promised to be better. And things did escalate. Things were, seemed better for a while, but then there was a time when things really escalated, and I was in fear of losing my life, and I fled. I fled, and I didn't know about a safety plan or having anything prepared, so I left everything behind. I was working at Liberty Health at the time, and I turned to maritime life, but I was making about $50,000 a year. I had a car, I had a home. I didn't own my home, but I had a nice home. And I left everything because you can't keep a job and flee abuse, right? They know where you are. I even left my ID. So looking for new work, I depleted any savings that I had. And I couldn't go to a food bank because you need ID, right? And so childcare, rent, food, it was a struggle, being a single mom. And not realizing that mental health issues were kicking in, and it just felt like everything was just spiraling down. It didn't feel like the floor was under my feet. Eventually, I depleted everything, and I had to go on Ontario Works. And at the time, I am grateful that I'm glad that there's a support. We have to be careful about using the word grateful, but I am glad that the support was there. But I have to tell you that I had to swallow my pride to be on assistance. So eventually, my rent arrears were too bad, and I had to decide on buying food or paying rent. And so the food that was in the fridge would be for my children. And what I would do doing job searches, I would go from drop-in to eat, job search, go to another drop-in, get tokens, and actually exchange those tokens for money for the next day, right? Or things like that. And it was such a struggle. A lot of people think that people that are not working or are on assistance don't want to work. It is it's harder to I don't even know how to explain this, just daily survival is much more hard work than getting up and going to work sometimes. And And so things just really started to spiral. I eventually couldn't stay in my apartment. I went into a shelter. And it seems like when it rains, it pours. And I did find a job that was paying cash on the table. I wanted to get out of the system as quickly as I can. And out of a relief worker not really knowing me, and when you're working, you leave your children with a child care at a shelter. And I extended that time because the next person in the shift, it's a long story, didn't come, and I stayed longer. And there was miscommunication at the shelter, and I was told that I would have consequences, but I didn't realize that I would lose my children for abandonment. And so that was a struggle, just trying to get my children back, which I did. It was a real catch-22, though. They wanted me to have rooms for them before I got them back, Children's Aid, and Ontario Work wanted me to have them back before they gave me the money to have the money for the rooms. So it was a real struggle. And I decided, I saw a flyer about Voices from the Street. And Voices from the Street is a speakers bureau where you talk and educate the public about your experiences to remove misconceptions and to talk about the policies that don't work together. And it's when I found this organization that I found the support I needed, the confidence, my confidence started to build. When somebody believes in you and gives you that support and shows you that way, especially when you're struggling and you don't know where to turn, that's the most impactful thing that you can do for someone. Going through those experiences, though, I forgot about my health. My children would get their needles, they would get, checkups and things like that, but there was no time for me to check on my health. I was so focused on just getting back on my feet. And now, but before I get into that, actually, so now I coordinate the Speakers Bureau, and while my children now is 24 and 19, and that could be some time ago, I still support people that are going through the same thing that I went through, if not worse, And we really need that, we think there's a safety net out there, but I actually call it a web because you get stuck. And there's, if I had intervention maybe earlier, I probably wouldn't be doing the work I'm doing now, which I love, but I probably it wouldn't have taken me years. But it is really, now that I've connected back, I'm working full time, it's still a struggle. It's still a struggle. My children are older, but I'm still their mom, and they still need things, and it's still a struggle. But when I go, now I've connected to a doctor. It took me a very long time to connect to a doctor. When my children were taken, I fell into addiction. And I felt so much stigma when I was trying to recover from medical care that it took me a long time. And from abuse, I wanted a female doctor. So now I found this wonderful doctor that we really connect with. But it seems like every time I go back to the doctor, there's something else wrong. I need 2 more trips, right? And so it's really important that we as women look after our health. We heard of all the issues that women, face in healthcare needs, and it's such a struggle. I don't know where my time is. 2 minutes, perfect. So one of the things what I wanted to wrap up with is it is, and there's a lot of services out there. There's a lot of services, more than there used to be. I wish, including the TTC, children ride free now. I really noticed the difference when my son turned 19 and the child tax credit stopped. That was a big difference for me, and I noticed it in my income. And there are services that are out there, and it can be difficult navigating through the services, but as I said, I do help to give back to people that come through the program Voices from the Street, and that was such a support for me. But we need better policies. We need better income. We need better food security. So thank you.